There's really an underdeveloped angle in RPGs that could be a huge benefit to the genre if we just leaned into it. I mean, the title role-playing game is kind of a misnomer when you think about the fact that if you're genuinely playing a role in this world, then you're supposed to have agency. And not just that, but you are not the whole game, and therefore the game should have some agency. But that's not usually the path that's taken. A lot of the big names in the industry are just storybooks where you move around, or, they don't have a story at all. But if we're actually playing the role, if this truly is a role-playing game, and the characters are really people in that world that you're playing the role in, then would the boss really be that concerned with staying in place? Even more so, would a character's death be so inconsequential? The word I'm looking for here is immersion. And a lot of devs, they get caught up on trying their best to predict every move that the player is going to make. But if you want to create an immersive experience, that's not the angle that we should be taking. What we're supposed to be doing, instead of trying to convince the player that we know what they're going to do, we need to convince the player that they don't know what the NPCs are going to do. Because in a role-playing game, the player has all the agency, and so therefore, the world should be what we're focusing on, right? But here's the problem. Games that do attempt this, where they try their best to build a world where plot armor is extinct and NPCs are truly unpredictable, they run into things like Skyrim, where after a certain amount of time, the game is locked in certain parts because a key NPC was killed in a random encounter. And that is cool, in my opinion, but it is also problematic, right? Like, that's not what we're going for here. I'm not talking about a world where it's truly Earth. I'm talking about one where we are trying our best to convince the player that they are the ones at the helm of the script. We want them to believe that they are the lead actor in their own movie, and the best that I think you're going to get is Among Us. And I know that that is a hard sell, that Among Us is the most immersive RPG I've ever played, but I want you to stick with me here because I need to explain to you something. Underneath that distracting color palette, underneath that silly art style and that slapstick sense of humor, there is real horror there. And I know horror is a weird word to use, but when you are there in an emergency meeting because a body was called after the last 5 people are the only ones left, you feel the tension because you know that that vote is going to decide whether or not you win or lose. But you're not thinking about winning or losing in that moment. You're thinking this next vote is going to dictate if you're going to live or die because of the use of immersion. Now, because there's no NPCs, everybody's a player, that means there can be no plot armor. And so what that expands upon further is that there are no situations like in Pokemon where you black out and you feel the walls of the story. I mean, when you're an entire party wipe in most turn-based RPGs and you're like, oh man, guess I'm back at the Poke Center, you feel the cold, dank cobble of the script whack you in the face. But in Among Us, you have no plot armor. You could die, your buddy could die, or even worse, your buddy could be the killer the entire time. And that, to me, is fascinating. It is even delved into the gameplay, with stuff like emergency meetings being used as a device for the players to tell the story, not the scriptwriters. And I want to expand on this further. Now, I know it sounds like my pitch is to erase single-player games, but that is far from what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that we should be erasing single-player games at all. If anything, I'm just saying that we need to improve upon them. And there are a few games, not a ton, that have already made the improvements that I'm talking about in order to make it feel like the player is telling the story. Now, I think Resident Evil comes close. It's not fully there, but what I mean is that it gives the enemies agency, right? Jack is wandering around the halls of his mansion while he's stalking for you. But I think that immersion is broken because Jack is stalking you. His movements are directly linear to your movements, and so you can feel that he's following you. And that is not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is something closer to Alien Isolation, where the xenomorph is not looking for you, the xenomorph is looking for food. And you happen to fall into that category. And what do I mean by that? Well, what Alien Isolation does that is so cool and so interesting is it sprinkles in extras, like from a movie. It sprinkles in extras into the game, and so the xenomorph isn't hunting you per se. I mean, it is. It's just hunting people, and it just so happens that anything alive is food. So, while yes, you are being hunted, there's an agency to the xenomorph. There is something that the xenomorph is actively looking for, and while you are within that Venn diagram of what it's looking for, it's not looking for you necessarily, and so there is more immersion there. There is more feeling that you are in that situation. The xenomorph is an animal. The xenomorph is a creature. It is not a video game boss. And that's the problem, is that video game bosses too often feel like video game bosses, when the xenomorph feels like an animal, and that is super cool. There's another game where, creatures kind of come off as animals, and it's an entire series of them called Monster Hunter. Now, the only game I've played is Monster Hunter World, but in at least Monster Hunter World, the creatures are wandering around the forest. They don't chill out in their individual biome. They are hunting for prey, and most of the time, they're not even actually looking for you. They don't see you as anything interesting. You have to specifically aggro them. You have to actually piss them off and distract them and take them away from what they're doing for them to care about you. And so now the story isn't, oh, I have to defeat Rathalos because he's vaguely evil. It's, oh, this suit of armor I got from skinning an animal. Which in retrospect is really gross, but that's not the point. The point is, I think that games are undervalued as a source of telling stories. It's not a medium that's respected as much as television or movies. And I think that that is a huge waste of potential. The problem is that the games industry as a whole has kind of fallen into a false binary. The assumption is that you can either have all gameplay and no story, or all story and no gameplay. And anything that tries to go in between isn't trying to interweave them, but instead trying to balance both of them. And that's not what we should be doing. See, even the director of Legend of Zelda, he said that he doesn't see video games as a vehicle for storytelling. If anything, he thinks that video games are not for stories at all. And that is really sad. That's super disappointing to hear from the creator of Legend of Zelda. One of the richest worlds that video game has to offer. And the philosophy is that it's not for telling a story? I mean, what you've done with that announcement has basically been to reduce Legend of Zelda into Tetris. And listen, Tetris is a fine game. I love Tetris. You will sink hours and hours of your time into Tetris. But it is a level-by-level, sequential boxed puzzles that don't really have any value in them, sentimentally at least. Now, I'm not saying that's what Zelda is, but I'm saying that's what Zelda's goal is to be. It's like if you took Tetris and if you gave it a story mode. Would you care about that story mode? If Orange Ricky is delivering a monologue to Cleveland Z, are you going to sit there and listen to the poignant point that's being made and really think in retrospect about it? No! And I wouldn't blame you, because in this context, all the story is there to do is just to break up more puzzles that you're actually there for. You're there for the dungeons. You're not there for the story. You're not there for the characters or for the plot. Because if the director doesn't have any respect for them, why should you? And even games that do prioritize story, they ignore gameplay almost entirely. If you look at Detroit Become Human, one of the best stories I've ever played. I don't know if that's controversial. I know some people really don't fuck with it. But even Detroit Become Human has a completely just insignificant gameplay loop that is so inconsequential. If you told me that you sat through a YouTube playthrough of Detroit Become Human and you had your opinion on the game, I would not interrupt you. Because you basically had the same experience I did, and I played the fucking thing. There is no element to the gameplay that is stand out, and that is not to say Detroit Become Human is not a good time. Detroit Become Human is a great time, but it is not a good game, necessarily. And I don't think that has to be the case. I don't think that we have to sit here and we have to pretend that there's only two options. Either it's a story game or it's a game game. It can be both, because Alien Isolation and Among Us proves it can be both. You can have both of them, and you don't have to compromise. And all this to say, I don't think multiplayer is the only solution. I think multiplayer is a great solution, but I don't think it's the only solution. And I think you can absolutely have single-player games that hit that mark of immersion that Among Us does. And, you know, if you are new to the channel, I hope you liked the video. Feel free to subscribe, only if you want to. If you are not new, I'm glad that I grabbed your attention just one more time. And have a good night. That's the whole thesis. Have a good night. Have a good night. Have a good night. Because there will be consequences if you don't. If you have a bad night, and I catch you having a bad night, I'll know. I've been keeping tabs on you. I'll know if you've been having a bad night. And I will personally make sure that you have a good night. Does this develop a parasocial relationship yet?